there is bilateral symmetrical 3 Hz spikes. Job done. Yeah, so that's what I've done. Active recall, absence, recall, whatever comes afterwards. All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Anass. I'm a final year medical student studying in London, and it has been a very long time. It's been a while since I made one of these sit-down videos. I've been on more of a vlogging spree more these days, just because of exams. It's a bit easier to film those videos. However, it has come to my attention that some of you do have exams in the next couple of weeks, next 2, 3, 4 weeks. I just had my exams a couple of days ago, but I do therefore think that this video is very timely due for many of you and hence should be extremely useful, I believe. So keep watching to the end in order to gather maximum value from this video. That sounded like a whole lot of waffle, but I think this video is going to be useful nonetheless. And this video is going to be about how to memorize information very quickly and fast and efficiently for exams. Now, I do feel like one of the issues of exam preparation, whether you have prepared quite hard for it or you haven't prepared as much, regardless of either, you kind of don't want to peak too early, right? You can peak like a month before and then it kind of just goes downhill. You want to be at the top of your game during the day of the exam. And so that's why when I was preparing for my exams, or when I do prepare for exams, I try to spend most of the year, or this is what I do, I spend most of the year going through content, making notes, trying to understand concepts, trying to understand the information, trying to understand how to apply that information, going to teaching sessions, going to placement, all of those things spent for most of the year. And then I only spend a small portion actually just memorizing information. That's usually sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance of the exam day, depending on how difficult I think it's going to be. So what that means for you is that if you have left things a bit late, you know, your exam is in 2, 3 weeks, you haven't done anything for it, there is still some hope out there for you. And if you actually spend your time wisely for the next few weeks, it can mean that you might do decent or do really well in those exams, but I can't guarantee that you'll actually have a good understanding of the module or the topic or whatever. But you know, there's a difference between having a good understanding of a topic or a module or a semester and passing an exam. They're actually two very different things. All right, so what are we actually going to talk about? So there has been plenty of videos talking about active recall, and that is going to be the underlying basis of how we're going to approach the whole memorization process. And there's plenty of videos obviously out there. You can have a watch of them, right? And there are obviously loads of different ways that you can use active recall. You can use flashcards, you can use electronic flashcards, you can use question banks, you can memorize straight out of a document, you can do question and answer between people. There are loads of ways to use active recall. What I'm going to present to you is a different way, or a way that hasn't been presented before on YouTube. And this is a technique I used heavily a couple of years ago and do use sometimes like these days too. And I found it useful. It worked for me. I did really well in my exams using that technique. And so it just gives you another option to try. And if your kind of learning mindset is like mine, you might find it useful in that sense. And the way I memorized things really quickly was to use one specific notebook. Actually, hold on, let me try and get the notebook. Where is it? Okay, it's this notebook here. It's Big Value Reporter's Notebook. All right, and I would fill it with plenty of information. Okay, we're gonna talk about how I did that, right? This is the exact notebook I used. Okay, you can use any notebook. You don't have to use this Big Value notebook. Use another notebook if you'd like. Just for a cool effect, what we're gonna call this method, we're gonna call it the high intensity notebook recall. All right, high intensity notebook recall. What this technique boils down to is that you want to take loads of information, right, and summarize it into the minimum amount of text, into the smallest surface area as possible, and go through that information frequently. And I've split this into a number of different steps of how you can go through that process. And the first step is distillation. yeah, you want to distill a big paragraph of information. So usually when you're taught information at uni, it's using like PowerPoint slides, and there might be a lot of text, there might be a lot of bullet points, or you might get the information online where there will be a lot of text as well, or from like PassMed, for example, where there will be a lot of text too. And you want to take that information and funnel it, right? Filter out all the crap, all the BS, get rid of that, and only be left with a core information that you can then put into your mind and memorize and upload if you'd like. And that makes sense because the more words you have to memorize, the more difficult it is. So if you start cutting out stuff, then you have less to memorize, so it is easier to memorize, right? Okay, simple maths. So a good example of where I did that was, let's take one of the questions on here, one of the lines that I used. So all of these are obviously small pieces of information, but we'll stick to step one, which is distillation first. It was to do with absence seizures, yeah? So you'll be able to see, I'll get a close-up of it. And this information I got from PassMed, so I have my iPad here, absence seizures. So what you can see, you should be able to see it on screen, is that there is actually quite a lot of information about absence seizures on here. And I don't want to spend time memorizing that whole paragraph. There's a whole like 2-line sentence, and then there's another 5 different bullet points to memorize there. I'd rather just distill this into one section. Okay, so let's work through this together and see how we can cut out stuff from this. So the first thing on here about absence seizures is that absence seizures, or petit mal, is a form of generalized epilepsy that is mostly seen in children. So the first thing here is I already knew that absence seizures are a form of generalized epilepsy, so I cut that out. That it is mostly seen in children. That's an important piece of information because if I get a question in the future that says, okay, what type of seizure is it in this 45-year-old? Because this seizure happens mostly in children, I can think that this is less likely to be in this 35 or 45-year-old man. Okay, so that's important, but let's keep going. So that is seen mostly in children. The typical age that is seen in is 3 to 10 years. Now, they've already given me the age, which is 3 to 10 years, which is obviously a child. So that makes the former sentence redundant, right? So that it's seen mostly in children, we can cut that out. So far we've got that it is mostly seen in 3 to 10-year-olds. Okay, fine. So let's write here, 3 to 10-year-olds. So then it says that girls are affected twice as commonly as boys. Okay, so that is an important piece of information too, but there's too many words there. The first thing is I don't really need to know that it's twice as common. Like there will be no question in the exam which says who is absence seizures more common in and by how much, you know. I only need to know that it's more common in girls than boys, and that's it. So point 2 will be it's more common in females than males. We've taken that whole bit now, which you can see here, and we've got it down into a few words, right? And that is the distillation aspect. We've summarized it into a few words. So now that we've gone through step 1 and we've picked out the important pieces of information from that whole paragraph thing, now the next step would be reformulation. So you want to reformulate all of these bullet points into a 1 or 1.5 lines on this notebook, taking up as little space as possible, because at the moment this still looks like a lot of stuff, but we need to reformulate it. So the way I did it here, so hopefully I'll get a shot of this here. I had absence, arrow. The arrow would mean that anything after this arrow is related to that very first word. So absence would kind of in my mind be the question. So if I see that in the notebook, absence, so talk about everything about absence that I've written down in that notebook. So arrow, FM, okay? Simple. Now from this I know that it's more common in females than males. Comma, the next piece of information. 3 to 10 year. Most common in 3 to 10-year-olds. So it's most common in females than males, and it's common in 3 to 10-year-olds, comma. It lasts for a few seconds, so I didn't actually have that on here, but we can add it here. So few secs. Then the last part was hyperventilation. The second half line would be just the EEG, okay? Arrow again, because anything that comes after the arrow is related to whatever is before the arrow. So with an EEG, you will see bilateral symmetrical 3 hertz spike. And so what I would then end up doing is take the whole semester, all of the information in the lecture slides, in the PowerPoints, and do this, right? So have the word. So the word here is absence, which in my mind would be the question. Once I see it in the notebook, I know that, okay, wait, I need to recall in all the information about absence. What is it? I remember FM, okay, it's more common in females than males. Also, okay, it's 3 to 10 years, fine, it's more common in 3 to 10-year-olds. What else was there after? A few seconds, so it lasts for a few seconds. In there was also hyperventilation, so it is sometimes triggered by hyperventilation. What else is there about it? In terms of EEG results, there is bilateral symmetrical 3 hertz spikes. Job done. Yeah, so that's what I've done. Active recall, absence, recall, whatever comes afterwards. Okay, so that was step 2, yeah, reformulation. So far, what do we have? Step 1, we've got distillation. Step 2 is reformulation. Step 3 is upload. So you need to start uploading all of this information, right? So what you can see here is I would fill the whole semester with this kind of stuff, yeah? So SCDC, subacute degeneration of the spinal cord or something like that. I think that's what it's called. Okay, and then I would have arrow. Okay, anything that comes after the arrow is related to what is before. So SCDC, arrow is, so you get mixed upper motor neuron, lower motor neuron signs, and also it happens over a few months, etc. Okay, all of these would be questions, and I would fill it up. Right? And then in order to upload this information into my mind, right, I would go through this big value notebook every single day as much as I can, yeah? And so what you actually find is that the more times you've gone through and recalled the information on here, the less time it will take you to cover it the following day. So I don't actually use spaced repetition. Okay, it is obviously a very useful tool. Although I am somewhat organized, I'm not that organized. Like I never really ever made study timetables, although they might be extremely useful. I wasn't organized enough. It just took too much effort to do something like that. So I never made these timetables, and it's difficult to actually keep track of crossing out of today I've gone through this, so I need to go through it in 3 days, or I need to go through it in 4 days. So what actually helped is if I had 2 weeks left and I had all this, like I know that everything I need to know for this semester is in this notebook, then if I just learn this, it's all done, right? That's it. The first day, it might take me like 1 day to cover this whole semester, right? The second day, it might take me less time, right? It might take me half a day. And then on the third day, it might take me, 2-3 hours. And then after that, it might take 1 hour. After that, it might take half an hour. And so what happens is by the time the exam comes, I can cover this notebook in like 15 to 30 minutes, which also means that I can cover this notebook more times per day, because on the very first day I could only cover this 1 time, but if it takes me 15 minutes to cover it towards the end of my exam season, then that means I can cover it 4 times in an hour. It also means that I can cover it like 20 times in 5 hours. If you get to that stage where you can cover a whole semester, you can cover this whole notebook, right, So just to end the video, I hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, then like the video, comment, like, subscribe. You know, follow me on the gram as well. I'm quite active on that. I hope that you smash your exams and you do way better than you think you might do. Yeah, it's important to stay optimistic, positive mindset. That's what it's all about. And now I'm waffling, so take care, safe. Psst.